Greetings, Acolyte. I am Inquisitor Medici, and today we are going to be accessing records concerning the Kroot, Krootis aviana. The Kroot, also designated by the Imperium as Kroot carnivore, are a xenos species of savage humanoids, or members of the Tau Empire. The Kroot evolved from avian creatures on their homeworld of Pek. Kroot are tall, a good half-meter taller than most humans. Their avian ancestors giving them a bird-like beak and long quills protruding from their heads like hair. Smaller quills, possibly the evolutionary remnants of feathers, can be found scattered over their bodies. A unique feature of the Kroot is that they evolve by selecting genetic traits of their defeated foes to absorb by eating them. Due to this, the many Kroot warbands across the galaxy often look radically different. Kroot leaders, known as Shapers, are generally the Kroot with the best ability for recognizing desirable traits in defeated foes, held their kindred. The word for a Kroot plan, what to eat, reshape themselves to suit the task at hand. For instance, a Shaper who wants his Kroot to gain muscle mass will campaign against orcs to acquire the suitable DNA, while extensive feeding on flying predators will allow the Kroot to grow wings. This eating of their foes ties in with the religious beliefs of the Kroot. They believe that when a warrior of any race dies, his warrior spirit should be kept, and the only way to do this by eating his flesh. The Kroot practice this in their burial customs, in which the body of the deceased is consumed by the kindred. Kroot who prey extensively on a particular species begin to take the characteristics of that creature. In sentient species such as orcs and humans, they may take on cultural aspects of that people as well. Kroot who are fed on Drukhari, for example, soon begin to show signs of cunning and intense cruelty the Drukhari are known for. In the case of animals, this sometimes leads to evolutionary dead ends. The kindred will find themselves locked into an animalistic and unintelligent form, unable to evolve themselves anymore. Species such as Tyrannid, who also absorb the DNA of their prey, are hazardous for Kroot to prey upon, as they may acquire too many undesirable Tyrannid characteristics. The ecology of the Kroot homeworld of Pek includes many species of animal that are particularly Kroot, result of a kindred's evolutionary missteps. The Kroot use these related creatures as laborers, pack animals, and even as weapons. Most common examples are the canine Kroot hounds, lumbering and powerful ape-like Kroot tox, the dromaeosaurid Nalok riding beasts, and the massive, dinosaur-like great Naloks. Another creature of note is the Kroot hawk, an animal held sacred by the Kroot, possibly because it may be their evolutionary ancestor. There are other Kroot subspecies that are considered outcasts in the Kroot society and are killed by Kroot if found. In order to gather genetic material from all over the galaxy, the Kroot offer themselves as mercenaries and sell their services to anyone willing to pay them. They travel the galaxy taking limited contracts from both major and minor intelligent starfaring species and are regularly employed by the Tau. While the contract with the Tau is supposed to be an exclusive one, Kroot regularly send out their war spheres to continue their mercenary trade amongst the wider cosmos. Anatomy and physiology. Kroot originated on the world of Peck, and, though their anatomy is humanoid, there is evidence to suggest that the roots of their evolution likely lie with that world's avian analogs. Kroot retain vestigial beaks and have a light, almost hollow bone structure, with 4 digits on each hand and foot. Kroot's skin is rough with small, bob spines, similar to the elongated quills on their heads, protruding from various locations on their flesh. Skin pigmentation ranges from earthy brown colors and dappled greens to vibrant oranges and everything in between. Depending on the feeding direction of the Kroot shapers, the coloration of each kindred can vary quite considerably. It is also common for Kroot from each kindred to have particular tribal markings painted onto their skin. Kroot mature quickly, with the most rapid period of growth occurring in the first 10 years of their lives. By the age of 12, Terran years are considered adults, and it is not unknown for Kroot to live to over 100 years old, their skin becoming increasingly pitted, leathery, in the last few years of life. Kroot are tall. Their bodies have a wiriness to them that appear deceptively fragile. In actuality, Kroot musculature is extremely powerful, composed of dense fibrospindles with a greater power-to-mass ratio than is found in humans. Swift muscle contractions create a whiplash effect, allowing the Kroot to deliver powerful blows with great rapidity. The Kroot tend to move on the ground with a bounding, hopping gait, but in dense forests, it can spring from tree to tree at great speed. The Kroot favor primitive garb, harnesses worked from the hides of animals and adored with bones, handcrafted amulets and circlets. The limited specimens that have been made available for study by the Imperial savants, the Magos Biologus, of the Adeptus Mechanicus, have possessed brains composed of a front and rear hemisphere. It appears that the larger frontal hemisphere controls the function of logic, reasoning and memory, while the rear, less developed hemisphere is more attuned to imagination and creativity. If this is indeed the case, it would go some way to explaining the pragmatic approach to the life of the Kroot and their current technological stagnation. Kroot head is crowned with a great mass of tough, flexible quills that appear to be part of the sensory apparatus. These quills contain what seems to be a ganglia running from the frontal lobes of the alien's brain, and this position be extremely effective at receiving and interpreting information in the surrounding environment. The olfactory cavity within the Kroot skull is also enlarged, with multiple sense organs within both it and the mouth. Their eyes are without pupils and generally a milky white. It is likely that they are able to see further into the infrared end of the spectrum, and can sense the body heat generated by their prey. Therefore, the Kroot make excellent trackers and will be extremely difficult to sneak up on. The Kroot generate little in the way of waste, as their bodies excrete metabolic waste in the form of a pungent, oily sweat that has a variety of properties, depending on what the Kroot has consumed. Most apparent benefits are that this sweat appears to be a heat retardant to a degree, has antibiotic properties, and can cause a poorly aimed blow to slide clear. It is suspected that the Kroot can alter the properties of the secretion in order to leave pheromone trails, mark territories, provide warning to their fellow Kroot, and even communicate with one another through scent. This may also be some form of biochemical control that extends to lower life forms such as other avians and animals, as there is evidence to suggest that the Kroot employ empathic pheromones, prevent such creatures from being startled by them, giving away their position in battle. Combined with this method of communication, the Kroot can learn new languages at an astounding rate, matching posture and tone to the sound of foreign words in order to discern their meaning. Their own verbal communication is a mixture of clicks and whistles, possibly reinforced by these pheromone excretions. This resolves your formal debriefing for now, Acolyte. Thank you for listening. You are dismissed. End Ox communication.